Well, here it is, Wednesday, the 25th of September, 2019, and I'm here in New Orleans train passenger terminal. It's not called Union Station, and I'm a little early. There isn't a Metropolitan lounge in this station, or anything like it really, for first-class passengers. There is the Magnolia Room, which is down in that corner, but it's really just a very small room. I've been told it only has about a dozen seats in it for first-class passengers who want roomier, plusher chairs, but it doesn't have apparently doesn't have soft drinks or refreshments, doesn't have its own restroom, doesn't have an attendant. It's just a way to get away from the throngs, if you will, in the main passenger terminal. And from what I understand, it's not open yet, but my understanding is you have to go into the main AMTRAK check-in ahead, and then they give you a code which you use to open the door and go in. But you know, if you have to leave for any reason, then you pretty much got to bring your stuff with you, and it's definitely a long way from the Metropolitan lounge experience that I've seen in other stations. So I think I'm just going to chill out here in the main lobby. Today we'll be getting on the AMTRAK Crescent train. It's a 2-day train. It departs here at New Orleans at 7 a.m. So I'm here just a little bit before 6 because I was uncertain of travel time from my hotel to the terminal. I wanted to make sure I didn't get here late, and I always like to get to the station at least an hour early. So as of course the taxi showed up early and took hardly any time to get here, so I'm here plenty early. It's not mobbed with people sleeping on benches or anything. Just a bit of a look around here. You've got your gates over here, A, B, and C. Nothing on there. Makes it look like all the train gates are right over in that corner, and I only see the 3 of them. And that's one exit at that end, the exit here, and the exit there, 3 sides. This is the one that goes out what appears to be the front of the station to the circular driveway. Over in that direction are the restrooms and some vending machines. Again, the gates are over here. There's a so-called charging station over there with a lady sleeping in her wheelchair in front of it. The big AMTRAK ticketing booth area. There's a almost as big Greyhound ticketing area. And I think that must just be administration or something over there. And then over here is a convenience store and a Subway and some video games and more vending machines. And that appears to be about it. Not that big of a terminal, really. So I usually do the route overview on the train, but often the lighting is so bad. I'm going to do it this time in the station. So we start out here today in New Orleans, and then it pretty much just follows I-59 up here to Hattiesburg. It crosses over into Mississippi, of course, very soon after leaving New Orleans, into Hattiesburg, and then up here to Meridian along I-59. Then it starts following I-20 and I-59 up to Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, and then it branches away from I-59 and follows I-20 over to Atlanta. Then it goes up this way along I-85 up to Greenville, South Carolina. And it continues up here to Charlotte. And then Greensboro. All of this in North Carolina. And then it gets away from the interstate and follows I-20, or just Highway 29, up here towards Lynchburg, Virginia, and then continues up here to Washington, D.C., and then up to Philadelphia, and I believe it ends in New York City, but I'm getting off in Philadelphia, just a little bit short of the end. I wanted to take the Crescent as far as possible, but I still have a dinner appointment tomorrow evening way back in Virginia in the Richmond area, so I have to take into account realistic driving time from wherever I get off the train back to here in time for my dinner appointment. And I figured if I went all the way to New York, it would be too long. You know, it'd probably add another 45 minutes or something to the train trip, and by the time I get the rental car and get out of New York and drive all the way back, it's going to cost me a couple of hours, and that's too much, but it'll work getting off at Philadelphia and driving back. And then I have some additional, I'm going to be all through this area driving around after the Train Odyssey is over, so there will be some videos on those things as well. Anyway, that's an overview. The Crescent is a very straight train, pretty much just straight up like that. So I'm just getting set up in my room here, and unlike the city of New Orleans, the Crescent is on a Viewliner type car, so it's a single level car, and I have done a more in-depth coverage of Viewliner Roomettes in my video on the AMTRAK Cardinal train, and I'm not going to repeat all that here, but I did use the sink already, and this is the way the sink deals with drainage. You just tip it up, and all the water just runs to the back, and you lock it out of the way. And there is a toilet in the room, which I've currently got with all the stuff I have to plug in. I normally only use the sink in the morning and at night when I'm, you know, brushing my teeth and so on. So my outlet strip, it's not as handy to do as it is with a superliner where the outlet is over by the window. You have to get your outlet strip over to the other side somehow. So what I usually do is just kind of tuck it up like this, so I can use the toilet if I have to, and then the sink will still come down more or less. It's a bit of an angle, but it still works. And then I don't have to unplug all my stuff, and the toilet lid will still rise up. It works pretty well. So now I have to go and set up my GPS and my scanner. So this is the hallway down from the entrance. Those are the 3 bedrooms that are available here, and then it's all roomettes down this side. So again, the room's about the same size as a superliner roomette. The door is just the same, the latch is just the same, except the this part swings in a little differently. But you know,
I'm in the clear.
Like that.
All right.
You've got your room light. You can turn it on. There we go. I'm not sure what it does when you turn it up, but turning it off. Come on, light. There we go. And then you've got your mirror light, which is way up high. I think it's there partially so if you're in the upper bunk you can use that too. It's just like a 3-way switch. So if you're in the upper bunk and you want to use, you have to use these, the lip below the sink and the cover of the toilet as your steps to get up and down. And so you want a light up there so you can see what you're doing. And that's why the light switch is up there as well. But you don't have to reach up there if you're down the lower level, you just turn it off that way. And the upper bunk doesn't swing down from the ceiling. It just lowers down from the ceiling with this lever here. So my room attendant just stopped by to introduce himself and say that breakfast will be served after we get out of, or get past Slidell, about another 50 minutes or so. I presume that we'll be long past the New Orleans area by that time, although I don't know exactly where Slidell is. I'll have to look that up. But it is now 7 o'clock, which is the published departure time for this train, and I did think I heard a whistle sound just a few seconds ago. My GPS knows where we are here at the station. There was another horn sounded. Oop, there we go.
Out on the time, over. Crescent slowing up on them.
So one full day, one full night, and half of tomorrow on the AMTRAK Crescent. Going past the Smoothie King Center, New Orleans. This is my current default thinking for baggage stowage in this room. Now I can actually stick things up in the overhead there, but I find it's really hard to get at it, so I don't put my stuff up there. I just sit my suitcase there, although if it gets in the way of my feet or something, there is this storage area to the left of my seat that I can put it in if I wish to, and I might choose to later on, or maybe just my backpack to clear up the toilet, make it a little easier to access. But I think this is a good working arrangement for one person in a Viewliner roomette. And while I was yakking, we passed the Superdome. So we're just passing under Interstate 10 here. I drove right on that ramp late yesterday afternoon coming back from the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. I have a separate video on that. There's a lot of streaks on the outside of this window, hoping that they don't show up too much once the sun is up a little bit more. Might actually help to cut off the extra light coming from the hallway. Might make a little less glare. Accelerating up through 30 miles an hour. I doubt we'll get a whole lot faster than this within the city, but we'll see. So here's our position within New Orleans at this time.
Forward.
biggest problem I have right now with photography is I'm getting a lot of reflection from light-colored objects in the room that I can't do anything to hide. All that light beige wall and toilet and sink areas showing up as reflections. That should go away somewhat once the angle of the sun changes. This is also part of I-10 here. We've been running pretty much underneath it for a while, and we still kind of are. Not sure if I'm going to be able to get a view of this or not. Our train is curving along up there. This is US Highway 61 that we just crossed under. I believe there's only 2 sleepers on this train. I'm in the one towards the rear, and behind this is 1 or 2 baggage cars. So we got the 2 sleeper cars, one in front of me, and then I believe the diner car first, and then the lounge car, which I don't plan to use on this trip, and then the coach cars in front of that. Kind of backwards from the way most of Amtrak's long distance trains are set up, where the coach cars are towards the rear and the first class is up front. Big above ground cemetery. Water table's too high here to be planting people 6 feet under. I think they just tend to bob to the surface again. So everything is in above ground. Structures of one kind or another, just a lot of these little, almost looks like cinder blocks, and maybe they are. These above ground crypts can't be very pleasant places to be in as hot as it gets down here. Luckily, no living person has to tolerate that. Our train's curving around up to the front. Of course, as we go past Lake Pontchartrain, going to be looking right into the sun, which is not too great. So we're just coming up on 10 here, where it intersects with 610 and then goes west. I presume we're going to continue to go north here. Okay. We've curved around a little bit here. Well, I was incorrect from my pre-trip study of the route. I'd seen one map that showed the train going around this way to get out, but now it appears we're going to exit the city going east and therefore not go around the north side of Lake Pontchartrain. Slidell is up here, and that's our first station stop on the trip, and breakfast should be served starting around the time we get to there. So my guess is we're going to go up this way now. Those streaks on the window are going to be a problem, although they will be less apparent once the sun gets at the right angle, a little bit more overhead, but it's going to ugly up the photography. It's very apparent that AMTRAK doesn't clean the outside of their windows anymore before a train starts. When I first started traveling with them, I could see them cleaning the windows going through major stations and things. They had contractors come out and doing that. You know, it was important to them that the view was good. That's apparently one of the things they've had to deal with due to funding cuts from Congress. This looks to me like a little dust on the windows, maybe some overnight condensation running down the windows, drying and just leaving those streaks. Somebody went over it with a little Windex or just a squeegee and some water in the morning. It would have probably been a lot better. going to be passing under Interstate 10 again here shortly, as it heads out east of the city. We already went past the junction of Interstate 10 and Interstate 610 at the west end of the city, and now this is Interstate 10 coming up from our right. That's coming up from downtown, and it's passing up to the northeast here as we go under it, and just to our left is where it intersects with 610. They're coming in from the west. That's the bypass, but we're not going to go right under the junction. Going due east.
And line line for 20, riding on that AMTRAK 138, 138 there. Line lock for 20 out. AMTRAK 20 converted to clear Oliver. Clear Oliver, 20 out.
So now we're curving to go due north, joining up with these tracks coming from the south. Looks like we'll pass under Interstate 10 again. And here's Interstate 10 again. Now we're accelerating.
Track 20, like bridge across your bridge. 20, stand by, we thank you. Stand by, yeah.
And we are Train 20, so when we hear things on the scanner referencing AMTRAK 20, that's us. Okay, now at 7:30, the tracks are finally up along the south end of Lake Pontchartrain, so in order to get a view of that, I'm going to leave my room. Pontchartrain causeway is off in the distance there, but of course we can't see it because it's already over the horizon and we're fairly down close to ground level.
Pictures, that room 2 across from you, you're not getting on until later tonight.
Okay.
So that room 2 is open if you want to take pictures and send them.
Great, thank you. Moved into the vacant room across the aisle from my room. The car attendant said I could do that. Nobody's going to be getting in here till later on today. It's a lot easier to sit here comfortably and do this than to stand there in the vestibule lurching around. At some point up here, the train's got to go across a causeway.
Southern, milepost 181.6, no defects. Norfolk Southern, milepost 181.
So we're rapidly approaching the point where we run out of land and have to start crossing the water. And there is just a faint line showing the causeway will be on. And it's just right next to the causeway that Interstate 10 goes across. Okay, we're on the causeway now. That's the Interstate 10 causeway off to that side. There's another causeway, which is US Highway 11 causeway. Not sure I'll be able to zoom in on it enough to get it lost in the jitter. But you can see a lower causeway that's a bit closer. That's the Highway 11 causeway. The map shows it as closed, and I don't see any traffic on it, so I presume that's the former Highway 11 causeway. You can see the high part of the Interstate 10 causeway there, where it goes up to a higher level to allow taller ships to go through into Lake Pontchartrain. But this is such a narrow causeway that we really just get no idea that there's anything under us. There's nothing like a single track causeway that's so narrow. There's no structure visible from the train. You can kind of see some sort of pilings that are down there occasionally going by, so you can see that. And that's the, I think the lift bridge there. And this is the Highway 11 causeway here. We've kind of converged.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your cafe car. Cafe car is now open and serving. Cafe car is located to the rear of your coaches, forward of your sleepers, towards the center of the train. Cafe car now open and serving.
I appreciate your job doing over.
Slidell's coming up real quick here. I think I'm going to go back to the other side one more time. Definitely nicer on this side of the train this morning. And we come to the end of the causeway. Okay, we're pulling into Slidell. It's our first station stop.
No. 2 more. And 1 more.
That's the conductor giving instructions to the engineer on how far to pull ahead to line up with the platform properly. So we're right here. Shortly after Slidell, we cross into state of Mississippi again. Of course, we spent most of yesterday going through Mississippi, coming down from Chicago, but we're going to go diagonally across Mississippi, switch over to my Mississippi map. So from Slidell, we're just going to kind of cut the corner of the state of Mississippi, going up through Hattiesburg here, and then Meridian, and then going out this way. But for a while, a few hours, we're going to be paralleling Highway 59, which apparently starts right here in Slidell. Interstate 10 goes along here. They show 12 here. I don't know where that's coming from, but certainly Interstate 10 goes along the coast, and we're going to be oh, I see, 12 comes in this way, 10 comes up from New Orleans, and then it's 10 going out this direction. I believe Interstate 12 ends at Slidell, 59 starts at Slidell. So we should be hearing a breakfast announcement here any moment. This is still Slidell, just north of the station. Not sure if my camera was actually recording video when we pulled out of the station or not. I thought it was, but then I just looked over and saw it wasn't recording. So hopefully I got some of that. Okay, we had our breakfast call, so I'm heading forward. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I was based in Pittsburgh on 737. And within a few years,
Wait a minute. You must have worked at somebody before that.
U.S. Air Force.
Oh, U.S. Air was a reasonably new airline.
Actually, it was the old, remember Allegheny Air?
No, I see. That's what I
In
mean.
1979, they changed the name to U.S. Air.
I see.
Passenger count and all that stuff. Is that nobody? Because you have no revenue passengers on board.
But they go anyway.
But well, yeah, it was wrapped in foil with decorated, with different different ways to put the suns all over it and all that stuff. And whoever had the biggest screw up during the week was
they use for programs like that. And they do everything. And you know where else they have them? There's a company that makes them. They have very lifelike, they're quite expensive, dolls for people in nursing homes, they're like comfort dolls. Then they give them to some of these those old people with Alzheimer's and all using.
It was in the 1990s. For a while, they had those little electronic things, and of course, it's for little girls. They loved it or whatever. But you had to input certain things in certain. In other words, treat it like it was a baby.
Just returning from the snack car, got a couple of drinks for later. Back through the dining car.
We'll just be. So then I looked at my watch and I thought that was the last one.
Alright, so it's 9:52. I'm back in my room after a long breakfast. They didn't have a lot of people taking advantage of breakfast. Not that many people in these two sleeper cars and nobody coming back from coach. I ended up at a table with a couple and a single person. As usual, it's community seating. And turned out we were all musicians, and everybody had had experience with the military, so a lot of stories went on, and we were there for quite a while. But the scenery was pretty much just like this. We were just going through some tracks in the woods, so there wasn't really much videoing to do. It would have just been the same scenery, so I didn't take much. But I did learn that this is the last run of the Crescent train, where they're going to be having the meal service, and not hot meals necessarily, but chef prepared meals. Henceforth on the Crescent, they're going to be keeping the dining car, but it'll just be like box lunches and maybe some things that you can nuke to warm up a little bit. But just as I mentioned on my other video from this Train Odyssey, where on the city of New Orleans, they announced that that trip, which was leaving on the 23rd from Chicago, was the last run of that train that was going to have the waiter and the chef and the hot prepared meals. So it just seems like on this trip I'm seeing the last of all of them. It's very sad. And I got caught up in conversation, so I didn't take a picture of what I got, but it was an omelet with some bacon and potatoes, one of the normal breakfast options, and that was quite good, but I didn't get a picture of it. Sorry, people who look forward to that kind of thing. So I did take a bit of video when we were going through Hattiesburg, so I don't know where we are now. I've got to figure it out. The train came to a stop here because the engineer says he's got a marker out, or an indicator saying that he has to stop, and he's talking to the dispatcher about why is that, when can I go.
Main and North Dragon out of the side. PTC telling me I gotta stop at North Dragon.
After availing myself of the toilet in the room, I just get a kick out of these sinks. So I'm going to do that again. I think it's kind of funny they have a light on these that lights to say the sink is down. I'm not sure what the point of that is. The fact that the sink is down is much more obvious than the light, but that's the way they do it. I'm still trying to relocate things so they're out of the highly reflective areas that are going to get on the picture. This is the first time we've been out of the woods, so to speak, since we entered Mississippi.
Got to clear the field here at the 7798. ATC's got me restricted. Over. Signal status unknown. Over.
Oh yeah, Highway 11 parallels I-59.
Alright, so clearing the field and DCT is not recognizing.
For some reason the engineers' conversations are much fainter. I just probably don't have the ideal antenna, the little rubber ducky antenna on here. Or it may just be that for some reason his radio is set to a lower volume for transmit. No idea. Right about where the middle of the screen is there, where 59 goes north and south before it starts angling to the northeast again. So in between Estabucci and Moselle, it looks like. Or is it Estabucci? So the tracks we're on are Norfolk Southern. We came down on Canadian, or CN tracks, was at Canadian National, all the way from Chicago.
Norfolk
on the
Southern, milepost 77.0, no defect.
Right, so we'd come down on CN tracks all the way from Chicago to New Orleans on the City of New Orleans train, but so far we're on that Norfolk Southern here. And I don't know if that applies all the way up to our destination. I don't imagine it does. But we should be able to tell from the scanner when we change territories. Got some ice from the cafe car, so my Coke can be a little colder. So we're just pooping along here at slow speed. 12 miles an hour. I think we're still in that restricted speed zone that the engineer doesn't know why it's in effect. Now we've still got the sun coming in at a unfortunate angle here, making for bad photography. Not much I can do about it. Still have a lot of reflections too. I was just checking the schedule to see when we're getting into Meridian, which is the next station stop. This is Ellisville we're in now at 10:26. So I think we're a little bit behind schedule. We have about 40 minutes to get to Meridian according to the schedule, and I'm not sure that's possible to do at this point. So we were looking at the map here, and there's Hattiesburg, and then up here is Laurel, and just south of Laurel is Ellisville, and that's where we are. So we're pretty close to Laurel, and then we have, that'll probably be about a little after 10:30 by the time we get to Laurel, and the schedule says we're supposed to be up here in Meridian at 11. So I don't know if they can do that distance there in half an hour or not. If they get moving, maybe they can.
What time we leave? I had both of them, guys. It was 13 minutes on that second one. I gotta calculate that first one.
The thing that's rattling here is the upper bunk, I believe. If I stand up and push against it, it stops rattling. But the track is kind of jouncy here. Let me see if I can improve some of that. Okay. So this might be Laurel here. It's the next town along the interstate, and I-59 is just off to the west of the train here, or the left side of the train. Up here to cross under or over under I-59. 59 is something we've been paralleling, but right here in Laurel it jogs to the east a little bit before continuing north, which is why we crossed it right there, right at the jog. So the essence of that is that the interstate's now on our right side instead of the left side.
Chastity.
I'm ready to copy.
Track 20, there, Laurel, John's ready to copy the scanner.
Alright, you showing 25 and on 31? You showing 25 and on 31, 2, and on 31.3 over?
That's correct, 25, 31, 2, 31.3.
That's correct. 6 on 131, 22 minutes on PCC.
Alright, 6 on the 131, 22 on PTC.
Alright, I got it, thank you.
Alright.
You ready, Jason?
We're stepping off bus set.
59, Channel 2, back up.
Alright, let's leave Laurel. Signal indication.
And we're rolling out of Laurel. Alright, train, you've got half an hour to make it all the way to Meridian. See if that's possible.
Cleared, 54.
At 11:47, Sandersville.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 48.0, no defects.
Up on the 44, on this AMTRAK 20.
We're under a speed restriction again, but moving along here at 16 miles an hour. It's safe to assume we won't be at Meridian by 11 o'clock because it's 3 minutes short of 11 o'clock. So we're behind schedule at this point. Well, the train car filled up with a noxious odor here. Not really sure what it is. Maybe we're close to a, well, there's a smelly ditch there, but I don't think that's it. Maybe we're close to a paper mill or something. It's one of those does not incur in nature kind of stenches. Announced that we were cleared from this speed restriction, but we can only go up to 44 miles an hour.
Right there, we. Haven't
started going faster yet, though. Now we're starting to ramp up, already at 20. It's another thing that the GPSs are good for. That white thing that's so obvious in the picture is the side of the toilet seat. I think I'm going to try to put my sweater over that to try to hide some of that reflection. Well, that got rid of one of the principal reflective objects. Now we're up to, we're going past 45 now, we're heading towards 80. 75 miles an hour. At 11:08.
Norfolk Southern, milepost, train 5.90, defects.
So at 11:08 we're passing Vosburg, Mississippi. Must be a pretty small town. Decelerating again. It's kind of speed up, slow down.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 24.3, no defects.
Track 28, clear, low average.
Clear, 6 went out.
At 11:36 we're just south of Meridian, Mississippi. They've been talking on the scanner about which track they're going to use for this train to come in on. And we are just a bit less than 80 miles an hour here. A lot of horn blowing. Swamp. Pea soup.
The shots went out.
Looks like we're coming into the south end of Meridian now, based on a GPS. airport is just on our left side. The sun is finally almost overhead.
AMTRAK 20 dispatcher. Johnson on this maybe 657 or 6 shots. Cleared them.
5667 and on 66 shots. Limit clear. 1141. 1141.
So we're almost on top of I-20, and here's where Meridian is. I-20 comes across from Jackson, so we're just about there. Then we should be following that out to the east to get into Alabama. That's I-20. And I think the train is gonna start bearing to the right a little bit as we shift onto the set of rails that heads to the northeast. Looks like we're starting to come in by downtown Meridian now.
Approach 27.
Approach 27. 345 behind AMTRAK driving. Now wants to go 65. That's 345.
closing the upper blinds because the sun's at just the right height to be streaming in up there and getting in my eyes now.
30 on, 345. On 345. You man. Just second. All right, understand.
Well, this train is supposed to have been into Meridian at 11:02. We pulled into here about 11:50, so roughly 50 minutes late. It is supposed to be a 5-minute stop here. So I'm not sure why 5 minutes.
345.
Unless they're expecting to offload and onload a significant number of passengers. But I imagine they're going to get going as soon as they can to stay on schedule or get back on schedule. Nice looking station building. So they are getting some people off from car 2010. So there are 3 full-size bedrooms here. 2 of them have doors on the aisle, and the other one has a door right here to make it easier to get in with wheelchairs and so on.
Employee
138, 138, boy ID 83261.
It's 138, AMTRAK 138, AMTRAK.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Got a conversation between apparently a locomotive engineer and a dispatcher here. They're arguing about, the engineer says that he's got
and
some...
while it's disengaged, it's showing you which track you're on? Is it showing you that you're on that southbound track, or is it just showing you the milepost? So,
Well, it's showing the milepost, it's a gray screen, but it is actually showing AT southbound lane.
Anyway, he's finding that there's some sort of a discrepancy between the track that he's on and where it's supposed to go from where he thinks it should be going.
Sir, ATS south.
ATS South, that's in stop operating mode. I had two that were in stop operating mode, ATS South and Knoxville West. You can go ahead and back out, select unmapped track, and you can proceed as you are. Chances are PTC is not going to come back up. This district will not be activated for the remainder of your trip. At your next terminal, you can attempt to log on or initialize once again and select your location. Over.
All right, back out, go to unmap. Log back in.
That's a good copy. Be safe. PTC out.
AMTRAK 20 up and riding. Station work complete. Looking for part. Meridian restricted speed. Over.
Okay, we got the go-ahead from the dispatcher. The horn is blown, and we're moving. And hope they can make up the hour late.
Burn, it's at 20. Y'all have a safe one.
49 and 03.
4903, northbound lane, you have to check now.
Good break, 20.
Our next stop will be Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We're supposed to have been there at 12:44, and that's 44 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Donnie Cartel speaking. At this time, Donnie Clark making his first call for the lunch. Should be interested in having a hot lunch in the Donnie Clark. Ladies and gentlemen, come on down at this time. Come on down at this time. Donnie Clark making his first call for lunch. Lunch is being served in the Donnie Clark town. The Donnie Clark located at Fort of all sleeping car accommodations behind all coach accommodations. Yes, go to the side, let them come back. So that's why. That's the method for the madness. Here. Yep. Yep. So now you got it. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. No problem.
It's 1:20 in the afternoon. The woods have opened up a little bit, but we're still in the woods. Enjoyable chat with a couple from Liverpool, England, talking about our various travels and train trips and places they lived. This is one reason why I really enjoy the dining car experience on these AMTRAK long distance trains, because with few exceptions you get seated with other people you've never met but who are very interesting and have good stories to tell, and you know, unless you're totally introverted, you can really enjoy the experience. It's not like I'm making friends for life, but people tend to open up and just tell good stories, and you find out you have a lot in common. We're not as close to I-90 or I-59 and I-20 as I thought we would be. We're kind of hanging off to the south a little ways, and we're only now just past Akron, so we're about that far away, and that means when we crossed the Black Warrior River, it was probably right about here in the middle of the screen, so not quite as close to Tuscaloosa as I thought it would be.
Norfolk Southern, mile 222.1, no defect.
.140 in the afternoon.
Cliff Mountain.
Looks like we're in Moundville. Alright, there, if the camera will focus, Moundville, coming up on Tuscaloosa. crossing some sort of a creek here in just a moment.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 212.7. No defects. Repeat, no defects.
Well, it was dry. Yeah, now we're curving northward to come right into Tuscaloosa.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 202.3, no defects.
Track 20, Virgin approach, Crab Trip.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 202.3, no defects.
Find the Virgin approach, Crab Trip.
Ready to cross under I-20, and here it is.
You look good, 19, over. Alright, y'all look good, flip red, y'all look careful.
This has got to be Tuscaloosa. We're just about an hour late.
Stop short, stop short.
And which best stop short?
whole area's got a landfill kind of stink to it. Area that we're passing through. That was I-359 we just passed under. They're going to move us ahead 4 cars. Or not. Now they're moving. I guess that's to get the past the coach cars to the sleeper cars. Meanwhile, we're holding up traffic. There's always a few of these towns along any of these routes where the station is inconveniently close to a road that people have to wait at. Yeah.
Give me 2 more. One more. Alright, that'll do it.
This self-storage place doesn't look too happening, does it? I don't think so. Anyway, we are here in Tuscaloosa. It's actually 2:05 in the afternoon. Alright, pulling out of Tuscaloosa. Next stop from Tuscaloosa is Birmingham. Supposed to be in Birmingham like in 10 minutes, but that isn't going to happen. I imagine that's going to take a good hour to get up there, unless we get slowed down. Take even longer. 2:20. We're meandering around here, actually going south at the moment. We're about ready to cross under I-20. Now curving around and starting to head east again. Paralleling US Highway 11 here. This is Coaling, Alabama. This is Vance, Alabama. That's 2:31.
Norfolk Southern milepost 177.8. Defects.
Right, so at 2:40 we're just east of Abernant, which is right there, more or less in the middle of the screen. We're just over a bit east of the interstate there. So, slowly creeping up on Birmingham. Bessemer, which is just over here on the west side of Birmingham.
5.3. Track 1, no, defects.
Alright, this is Lipscomb, or Lipscomb. Lipscomb is right there, northeast of Bessemer.
Track 1, no defects. NSMP 151.2. Track 1, no defects. Detector out.
Something coming up here on the right. Just a moment. It looks like it could be a cemetery, but maybe it's something entirely different.
Norfolk Southern milepost 147.
Scared by another train, or by trees. It doesn't do us any good. I assume this is Birmingham we're in now. So I think we're getting ready to pull into the station. We should have arrived at 2:15. It's now 3 o'clock, so we're 45 minutes late. We made up 15 minutes of our lateness between Tuscaloosa and Birmingham. This overpass up here is I-65. I-65 here. about at the station.
Alright, CO 2025, one track 2413, head on board.
Alright, I'm saying government logo number 1, 1324, headed in north direction, over.
Master 1604 JMR.
1604 JMR, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The station of Philip shortly will be Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham will serve as our first smoke stop. If you'd like to step off the train, have a smoke, or stretch your legs, this will be the stop to do so. We ask you please remain train-side. We're only going to be here for approximately 5 minutes or so. As soon as we finish our work, we will be on our way, so we ask you to please remain train-side, but you can't step off, have a smoke, or stretch your legs. This station stop, Birmingham, Alabama.
I have a key fob. Yeah, I'm gonna whatever.
And you can go in there anytime you would like for dinner. There's not going to be a certain seat time. You do not need a big reservation. It's not full time, so you go have dinner whenever you would like between 5 and 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Ooh, it's warm out here. Holy cats. For the air-conditioned comfort of my room, it's hot out here. Birmingham Station. In all its eroded glory. Some of those tracks don't even look like you could roll stock over them. Sure, those are a going concern on the far side. Doesn't take too much neglect. I mean, it's chunking out and everything up in there, holes in it and so on.
It's like you were doing a lot of it in Chicago. It takes a lot of it in Chicago.
All right, at around 3:25, we pulled out of Birmingham. We're still in the city. And comparing that to the schedule, 2:24. So almost exactly an hour late pulling out of Birmingham. So we came in 45 minutes late. We left an hour late. I figured they might stop for like 5 minutes, but they had a fairly long station stop. They might have had a crew change. They might have had to, you know, empty tanks or fill up water or something. But anyway, at least we haven't dropped more than an hour behind schedule. And really, an hour behind schedule is not that unusual for Amtrak long-distance trains anyhow. If you're only an hour late, it's no big deal. Alright, so from Birmingham, the next stop is Anniston, Alabama, which should be let's see, the Coosa River at Riverside. We should still be going along I-20. So Anniston along I-20. Alright, so Anniston is way out here, roughly 2/3 the distance from Birmingham to the Georgia state line. And we're supposed to be at Anniston around 4 o'clock, so I imagine it'll be 5 o'clock. So an hour and a half from now, should be there. The Birmingham train station, as you probably saw in some of the earlier footage, our car attendant says the actual terminal is very nice and modern, but the actual platforms are really old and obviously have had very little maintenance. The concrete's chunking out, the roof is leaking, and big cracks and some sort of mineral stalactites hanging off of them. And look like there's only one rail that goes through there that's in regular use, at least next to the platform. The other two platforms I saw had obviously non-used rails, and one of them was, well, he said he's only seen maintenance, little like Cushman maintenance carts going on it, no trains. Good sized place.
Some paper.
Looks like they're doing steel scrap processing here.
Century 24024. Come on over 74, please, if you want.
It's a little bit hilly here, Birmingham. about ready to pass under I-20. There we go. Which, although it's generally going to the east, at this point it's going somewhat southeast. And just meandering around a little bit on its way out of town. Well, we're out of Birmingham now, and we're in the small town just to the east, Irondale. Because it's shown, well, it's shown as part of the greater Birmingham metropolitan area, but Irondale is right there in the middle of the screen. We still have to pass 459. Oh yeah, that's a winner there. Makes you wonder when there's one of these neighborhoods where there's a total wreck of a dilapidated, collapsing house, and right next to it's a nice, well-maintained house with a good yard and everything. And you wonder, are those people constantly complaining to the city about that eyesore next door, or, you know, people complain when you don't mow your lawn, but when you've got a disparity like that, it would seem like it'd be a real problem for the neighbors. I did get my camera out quite quick enough. We're along this river here. I don't know which one it is. Anyway, it's rather picturesque. We'd actually crossed over it, even though the map doesn't look like we crossed over, but we did, on a rather high bridge, and then down below the bridge was the remains of another bridge at a much lower level, just abandoned in place. It was very photogenic, but it happened so quick I didn't get my camera out in time. This looks like it has some rapids in it, a rather stony bed a lot of the time. Of course, the glare on the window is not being my friend at all. But we're going to cross it up here again, so maybe that'll be good. I-20. Yeah, at 4 o'clock we're right in between the towns of Leeds and Moody, just on the south side of I-20. Now we're in the town of Leeds.
Norfolk Southern milepost 781.8. No defects. No defects.
So we're more following US Highway 78 here than we are the interstate, but they're all more or less going the same way. Crossing US Highway 78 here.
Clear Coleman, AMTRAK 20 folks.
Out here. Little Alabama hill country here. Quite the drop off here. Unfortunately, I've got tons of reflections. The dispatcher called the engineer, said, when you go by the fire, tell me how bad it is. Not sure which fire that is. Well, apparently there was a fire back there on the left side, but I was too late to get over to see it before we'd passed it. Made it sound like it might have been a vehicle fire, either on the interstate or on US Highway 78, both of which we were close to on the left side.
Norfolk 771.7. No defects.
Please dispatch over. This is stand by 1 second. 64, go ahead, over. Come on, M-Train's bell stopped. Go ahead, Tristan. Standing on the 64, leave all
771. No defects.
2, over. X1, you got the AMTK 138 lead. That's right, over. Yeah, just shoot it to me on the amp panel. 20B, just a minute, I'll get you a light at Roberts, waiting on 64 to get the clear and hold, over.
We're in a bit of a tunnel here. First one on this trip so far.
Drum hat and approach block, air stop, shortest signal, Roberts.
Stop that shorter than Roberts.
Looks like we're coming to a stop. Heard the engineers saying something about a belt that needed attention. I'm not sure what that would be. Something in the locomotive.
Northeast dispatcher, 640. I'll be able to pick up the short side north.
Trying to get onto a short siding.
Here, let me check and see if this PTC's gave you some sorters. So, I go ahead. Did it give you the 10 between the 760.9 and the 761.2? Yes, sir, we got that one. And did it give you a 10 between the 735.8 and the 735.9? Yes, sir, we got it too. All right, here we go.
I have no idea what they were just talking about.
Here we go.
So I don't know what that was all about, but we're moving again. Must have sat here for 10 or 15 minutes. Pretty enough spot to be sitting in. Kind of a pass through the hills here, having just come through that tunnel a little ways back.
AMTRAK.
West of Pell City. So at 4:47, we're here at Pell City, right in the middle of the screen. It's roughly halfway between the outskirts of Birmingham and Anniston. And then about that same distance from here to there, from Anniston to the Georgia state line. So we're only getting further behind schedule. This is still part of Pell City. Looks like a town that's about 5 blocks wide. Another 10 minutes, it's going to be time to go to the dining car again for dinner. Should have been crossing into Georgia around this time. So, way behind schedule. Another stop. Alright, they just made an announcement saying that the reason we're stopped is because we're following a freight train and for some reason it stopped. So we're just sitting here patiently waiting for it to get a move on, and don't know how long that'll take. But it is 5 o'clock, so I should be able to start heading down to dinner here presently. And now we're moving again. Getting much video out the window from the dining car. So I came down for dinner and there's nobody here. As I was leaving after lunch, a woman who was seated at the booth behind me, because I did this with the camera, challenged me and said I shouldn't have been including her in my video. And I said, well, I'm going to edit you out if I got you in it at all, but you know, you're not immune from being in people's videos when you're on planes and trains and airports and out in public. But nevertheless, I planned to edit her out. She acted like she'd never had a picture taken of her before. So we're passing through the town of Riverside now, which is along the Coosa River. So we're going to be crossing over a bridge. So there's the Coosa River. It's a pretty part of the country. All right. After another good dinner on the train, I had the most expensive meal. I think it was almost $40 if you just bought it outright. And it was kind of like the AMTRAK signature steak, which is usually, I think, their most expensive meal. But this one had the sort of surf and turf meal that was even more expensive. And basically, I think it was just the signature steak, green beans, salad, baked potato, dessert. But they also put a crab cake on top of the steak. And that was very good. And the steak was quite good. I've heard that it was, but now I've tried it. Alright, well, it's 6:17 and we're just almost at Edwardsville, if I can find it. There it is, more or less in the middle of the screen, Edwardsville. It's on US Highway 78, just north of I-20, and pretty close to the Georgia border. Still generally hilly around here, although I don't think as much as it was a bit further back. But the train can't seem to get any speed, and the track kind of twists and turns around. No straight shots here. It's just a slow meander. We're doing about 45 miles an hour, and I think we have been for the last hour. You can see on this particular image how all the roads are so twisty-turny, something you don't normally find when the ground is flat. The next town will be Fruithurst, and then it's not too far from there to the state line. I just kind of wondered what's going on with the dining car here, because we have two sleeper cars, and while I don't think they're completely full, I think the car I'm in is only about half full. It seems like most of the rooms in the sleeper car in front of me are full, most of them anyway. But every time I've gone to meal here, they call for seating and nobody shows up, and I'm there by myself, you know. There's been a couple times when one or two people were there before me, but it's the first time I've taken an AMTRAK long-distance train when they didn't have a rapid migration of passengers to the dining car as soon as they said you could come. And even today, you know, we were sitting there, it was me and this other guy across one table, nobody behind us, two people in the table next to me on the other side, and I think three people on the table across from them, and none of the other tables were occupied, and that was for a very leisurely long dinner taking our time. Nobody else came in. And I'm thinking, all these people in the sleeper car have paid for their meals. Don't they understand that? Do they think they have to go spend extra money? I just don't get that. Okay, we're in the town of Fruithurst here. First thing we come to is a lumber operation. Looks like Fruithurst is about 10 blocks long and about 4 blocks wide, and we're way out on the south end of it. Well, we're not in Georgia yet, but they just announced that we crossed the time zone, and now it's 1 hour later. I kind of assumed that might be right at the state line, but apparently not. Or maybe they just did it now because they had an opportunity, a lull in the action, and we're getting a jump on it by a few miles. Well, I just missed the mighty Tallapoosa River. It looked like a dry gulch, actually, when we went over it. I was thinking that was just a tributary to it, but that was the whole river. I think I'm getting better results further away from the window. And we have left Muscadine. I think it was all on the other side of us. Looks like a town of about 2 blocks by 2 blocks. So we are now in the fair state of Georgia. Doesn't look much different. Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. After having changed time zones, it would have been 7 o'clock otherwise. And we're in western Georgia. We're due to get into Atlanta between 1.5 and 2 hours late. I think it's going to be there about another hour from now. It should have been there more like 7 o'clock, I think. But the AMTRAK app says that while that's true, it says that they're expecting to make up the delay and supposed to arrive into Philadelphia, which is my get-off point, slightly earlier than scheduled. So I don't know if they just don't wait so long at one of the stations or how they do that, but assuming it's true, hopefully I'll still arrive where I'm going on time. But there's not much else to do here because it's dark outside. I'm going to make another comment here. I've been kind of gently belly aching about this issue, and it's why I don't like... I'm going to have to turn some lights on here. It's too hard to see what's going on. There we go. Why I don't care for Viewliner train Roomettes. I much prefer Superliner train Roomettes. This complaint does not apply to full-size rooms because they're nearly identical between the two types of train. The issue is cleanliness. One might argue that this toilet in the room is handy, but of course if you're traveling with more than one person in the room, then you have to shoo the other person out while you use the toilet, most likely. But even for one traveler, the fact of the matter is half the people who are in this room are guys. If you know, I'm sure it's approximately half the people, and most guys stand when they take a leak. That's the fact of the matter. And, you know, it doesn't come out straight necessarily. So you can only imagine how much urine has gotten on the carpet down there and on the side of this seat. And you know that they're not shampooing these after every trip. And I imagine it's not a lot, but it's still, you know, these trains have been around for decades. And so far, every time I've traveled in a Viewliner Roomette, I stay in the upper bunk. I don't really want to, but I consider it much more likely to be clean there than it is down here. It's not too bad to just to sit in the seats, but I don't really want to be sleeping on top of a thin sheet on top of, well, there is a mattress, grant you, but you know, they turn the mattress over one way or the other depending how they decide to put the sheet on it. So quite potentially you've got a mattress that's been sitting on, to not put too fine a point on it, pissed on a poultry, there we go, with a thin sheet on top of it, and then your face or whatever right on the other side of that. Is it going to kill you? No. Is it sanitary? No. Is it desirable? No. So, yeah, I don't care for it that much, and I would much rather have toilets be where toilets are supposed to be and not 2 inches from the side of the bed I'm going to be sleeping on, and at the same level, and on a rocking, rolling train where it's just going to make the situation worse as far as hygiene and things like that. So I'm not letting it ruin my day, but I really hope AMTRAK goes through with what I heard they were going to do, and that was when they refurbish these, make them more like superliners and take the bathrooms out and convert one of the roomettes into a public bathroom like they would have on a superliner. To me, that makes infinitely more sense. The rooms themselves will be more comfortable and cleaner, and I hope they go and do it that way. Anyway, that's my little spiel on the subject. I'm going to stick it out for another hour before I go to bed, but the track is relatively smooth now, at least. We're just enjoying absolutely nothing out the window at this point. We're between the towns of Temple and Douglasville, and this is the town of Villa Rica. For the few lights you can see moving by outside. So right in the middle of the screen is Villa Rica, and Douglasville is now in the middle of the screen. So we're roughly halfway between them. So actually we're on the outskirts of Atlanta at 8:20 in the evening, as it is here. And according to the schedule, we're supposed to be into Atlanta at 7:30. So we're only really about an hour late at this point. We've somehow improved things from being an hour and a half or more late to being only an hour late. So that may be how they help make up the schedule. It's supposed to sit in Atlanta for an hour or half an hour. So they obviously, even if they arrived right now, they would be late, but they may not sit there for half an hour before continuing. That may be one of the ways they make up their schedule, because they could, you know, immediately offload and unload passengers, and if they have to change engineers or something, things like that, they could do pretty quickly and then just get going again, and thereby help out a lot with the schedule. I'm looking at the schedule here to see what other points they tarry, and Atlanta is one. Charlotte has about a 20-minute layover. Greensboro only has about 5 or 10 minutes or something. Washington, D.C. does not have a layover. Yeah, so it would seem like they would have to make up a lot of it right away in Atlanta if they're going to get back on schedule. So anyway, I'm actually just sitting here watching YouTube videos on my phone. Waiting till I'm tired enough to go to bed. This is Douglasville. I keep getting glimpses in the distance of something that's kind of off to our right a little bit, and at a lower altitude, as if we're up on a ridge or something, and maybe we are, but I get what appears to be a lot of lights in the distance and lower down than we are. And considering that we're heading kind of northeast and we're fairly close to Atlanta, I wonder if those lights I get glimpses of are part of the, you know, outer extremes of Atlanta. And is Atlanta at a lower altitude than Douglasville. Maybe we're still up in some hills. Cruising along at just over 50 miles an hour.
No defects.
So this green area, dark green area, is supposed to be the greater Atlanta area. And yeah, so that's all Atlanta, and here's Douglasville. So the angle I was seeing would have been off this way towards like East Point, and it's not that far away. So I suppose those could be the lights I was seeing. Alright, it's a couple minutes past 9 o'clock, and we are in Atlanta, right around the downtown area. It seems that my smartphone is a little better for this than the GPS is, just because I'm trying to look at a taller map at the moment than I am a wide map. The GPS is optimized for telling you how to get places or to see where you are locally. And there are times when I find that the well, this is Google Maps on here. It has a different level of detail, which is not as good as the GPS, but it also shows some things that the GPS doesn't show, so I do occasionally use this. Now we're right here, and here's downtown Atlanta, and I'm guessing the train station is somewhere right around here. So we're kind of close to it. Well, maybe not. This up here looks like a train station, doesn't it? I imagine that's probably the Union Station, and we seem to be progressing on a northeasterly course and are quite close to it. You can see a couple of low skyscrapers there from the lights. Yeah, so we have arrived here at 9:12 at Atlanta Peachtree Station, which is the station that the Crescent train uses. So I'm going to get up and walk around a little bit. Try to unload some trash. This, by the way, is the shower room down here. The next car is the baggage car. Looking for the trash.
shore.
Yeah, it's 9:24.
Up, guys.
We pull out. They definitely expedited the turnaround here. They got the first class passengers boarded and the luggage on and off as quickly as they could. Then they hustled the coach passengers out
20, go on red test, go to 53.
out to the train, and the very moment, the last thing that was happening really was getting this one passenger in my car who needed the wheelchair lift. And once he was on there, they blew the whistle, and you know, I was the last passenger on the train because I was outside and couldn't get back into my car until the wheelchair lift was out of the way. So I was like, as soon as you're on the train, we're pulling away.
AMTRAK 20 line of release, CA, number 7075, box 3, Vermont, Hallmark, main number 2, reported clear by paint. We couldn't make out any of it there, we could try it again. Don't sound like it going off.
The radio's been dodgy on this for the whole trip. The engineer has been very faint, like it's not really putting out. And they obviously noticed that here too, that they were having a hard time understanding what the dispatcher was having a hard time understanding the engineer. So they switched to a different radio channel. And I don't know that that's one of those in the bank that I've got programmed in my scanner, so I may not be hearing much of the engineer, possibly, until they change again. But I'm going to be shutting the radio off here shortly anyhow for tonight. Okay, I think that's enough of shooting in the dark here today. Okay, here's just a quick recap of my other videos showing what the Viewliner Roomette is like at night. So the you can certainly sit here unless you're very tall. People much more than 6 feet are going to be bumping their heads, but otherwise people of average height can sit quite comfortably in these seats here, you know, and one person can be up in the upper bunk and another person sitting down here. You can put, you know, keep your luggage down here. During the day I keep my luggage here, but I just move it to the seat at night so I can use these steps here to get up into the upper bunk. And the upper bunk does have this cutout in it. It's narrower at this end and much wider at this end, so you pretty much need to have the head end be where I'm at. Unlike in a Superliner, you can have the bed oriented either way, and you could do that here, but most people are narrower at the foot end than they are at the head and shoulders end. So you're going to feel really cramped if your head end is down there where the bed is much narrower. So I've got that set up. They do have the safety straps to keep you from rolling out of bed at night. They're hooked into the ceiling. And get all the privacy you need. And of course, the upper level does have its own shades, so you can either have those open or not, whatever floats your boat. And of course, there's separate ventilation for the upper bunk, as well as separate control of the room lights. So the ceiling lights you can turn on and off. The wall light, certainly there's a reading light up there we can turn on and off. So I can turn the room lights on and off. From this button. So you can turn the room lights on and off from either seat or the upper bunk or the switch by the door. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can turn the mirror light on from here or from down here. So either upper or lower bed can turn the mirror light on. And it is nice to have it for better illumination of the stairs if you're coming down and the rest of the room is dark. But it is very narrow here, so you have to make sure you don't stand up and bonk your head into the wide part of the bed. So I think we're good to go here. The other thing that I'm not too keen on with the view liners, and I'm sure I mentioned this in my other video on the room liner, or the view liner Roomette tour, I probably jumbled what I just said, is that the blinds are attached with top and bottom rails. It's a little hard to see that, but let me see if I can. Yeah. So the blinds are attached with rails at the bottom and at the top, which makes them fiddly to close because one side's always binding and not wanting to move properly. Whereas with the super liners, they're just regular curtains and they hang from the top rail. The bottom just floats around. It just works so much better. But the big deal about it is if you've got something stuck on the windshield, like people who put their GPSs on there, because the curtain can't just flow out and around the GPS, you have to take it off the window if you want to close the blinds for privacy. Which, when they renovate these things, I hope that somebody there is smart enough to realize that these aren't a great idea, and it's inferior to the way the super liner does it in several different ways.